Hey Jesse,
Hey, how's it going, Aryeh?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing well.
So thanks for coming on with me today. I'm Aryeh Cohen-Wade. Um, this is a discussion with Jesse Singal. Jesse, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a senior editor at New York Magazine's website where I run Science of Us. It's our social science website.
So thanks for coming on today. So we're going to be discussing an article that you wrote that proved to be really controversial, maybe surprisingly so, maybe not. It's called "How the Fight Over Transgender Kids Got a Leading Sex Researcher Fired," and I think this touches on a lot of interesting stuff about the topic at hand, but also how people communicate in the internet age. And we're gonna hopefully get into all this. I should say at the outset that you and I have known each other for roughly half of our lives,
Yeah,
um, because we met when I was 16 and probably you were 15.
yeah, or maybe 14 actually.
Yeah, so we met on a trip to Israel, and so yeah, as you were saying earlier, this is not evidence of the international Jewish conspiracy,
No, or it is,
but
depending on how you look at it.
but we are friendly, and since a lot of what's happened with this article is people accusing you of being a monster, I obviously don't think you are a monster, and so viewers can take that for what it's worth. So why don't we just start with this is a really long article. We'll link to it. I encourage everyone to read it because it's a fascinating story, and you did a really good job. The article is like 10,000 words, but can you sum it up in a couple minutes as best you can?
Yeah. Excuse me. For a long time at a hospital in Toronto called the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, there's been a place called the Child, Youth, and Family Gender Identity Clinic. So this is a clinic for kids and adolescents who have gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria just means that whatever gender you were assigned at birth, you feel discomfort about it, and sometimes profound discomfort. Um, so for decades, this clinic had been run by Dr. Kenneth Zucker, and it had long attracted a lot of controversy from the trans community and their sort of allied activists and advocates because it basically has a view of gender identity development where that's very externally oriented. In this view, they call it a biopsychosocial development model. Basically, we all learn how to be boys or girls, and however we act is sort of reinforced by parents and society and stuff like that. So they did not think. When I say they, I sort of refer to Zucker because a lot of clinicians there would tend to adopt his views. He sort of had a lot of students, a lot of researchers would pass through there because, despite the controversy, it was seen as a world class research clinic. In their view, we're not really born with a gender. You're not. I was born with male anatomy. For lack of a better word, biologically male. But I learned to be male, and that reinforced itself and eventually solidified. They thought that at a young age, this stuff is really malleable, and that effectively kids can get confused at a young age. And it's important to acknowledge that even the folks who vehemently disagreed with them, at least the other researchers who did, everyone thinks that sometimes if a little boy comes in and says, I'm a girl or I want to be a girl, it's because they don't like playing football, they don't like rough and tumble play, stuff like that. So they think
Mm-hmm.
because I don't like football, I must be a girl. So in cases like that where the dysphoria isn't that serious, a good clinician will sort of help them develop a less rigid view of gender. Because ideally, if really all that's going on is that sort of level of confusion, you want to teach them that boys don't have to like football. Boys can play with dolls. Boys can do all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, to make a very long story short, what made this clinic controversial is that in some cases, they would do what they called limit setting. They would, if a kid, let's say a little boy who's 4 years old comes in and he's really fixated on playing with dolls and on dressing up like a girl, sometimes the clinic would work with parents to impose limits on those behaviors because the clinic saw it as self-reinforcing. Like if you let him dress up like a girl every day and only wear wigs and only play with dolls, because kids have a less sophisticated view of gender, that will reinforce the notion that he's a girl. And the clinic was open with the fact that they thought the best case outcome in a situation like that is to help the kid be comfortable in their own gender. Or not their own gender, but their assigned gender or anatomical gender. The problem was, to a lot of people, this idea of effectively taking away a kid's doll, and well, I'll go into the details, but the point is that idea of not letting a little boy play with a doll sounds like conversion therapy, because there have been these infamous therapies, back when conversion therapy for homosexuality was a big thing, you try to get someone to quote unquote act like a man. So a lot of people saw in this treatment regime or regimen something similar to conversion therapy. And eventually this led to a lot of really bad rumors about how the clinic was traumatizing kids and destroying lives and effectively killing trans people. So,
and we should say conversion therapy, as far as I know, is still practiced in many places. Yeah. Someone who has been on Blood Games before was a friend of mine, Gabriel Arana, is gay, and he had conversion therapy when he came out as a teenager. He wrote about it, and actually this article kind of helped spark the movement against conversion therapy. But it's probably still being practiced in many places.
Yeah, and I think among sort of the gay and lesbian community, one of the victories is that stuff is sort of not seen as, like, respectable clinicians who get published in mainstream publications, for the most part, don't do that. And we see it more as sort of, I think I put in the article, like a backwards shack in the Bible Belt. Like, it's not something real clinicians do. But eventually there was enough pressure from some of the trans community and from activists that the hospital, CAMH, announced that they would do an external review. That external review came back and found basically some really bad stuff, the worst of which was that the head, Kenneth Zucker, had asked an adolescent patient to take their shirt off and called them a hairy little vermin, which in any case would be inappropriate. But you're talking about an adolescent trans person who, by definition is transitioning and is probably vulnerable about their body. That's a horrible thing. So where my article comes in is I basically did a lot of reporting to look into how the external review was conducted. I found that it's hard for people to set aside their thoughts about Zucker in the clinic here. Setting aside those thoughts, if you just look at it in terms of procedure, the review process was a disaster. All these sorts of rumors and innuendo got into the report. The hairy little vermin thing, I tracked down the person who said it happened to him. I call him Adam in the story. It didn't happen. It was another clinician, not Zucker, who did that. Nothing in the report was fact-checked. The report was then published on the CAMH website, including, the hairy little Zucker thing, according to a lawyer I talked to, might be libelous. And that was used.
Hairy little vermin.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said hairy little Zucker. Zucker is purported to have called someone a hairy little vermin, and you very conclusively prove that this individual conflated a memory of someone else calling him this, and people should read the story, but it's pretty plain that this did not happen, and they basically took one person's like possibly decades old memory and used it as a key accusation when it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. So that is just the biggest example. That all sorts of accusations like that made it into this official document that was published on the hospital's website and used as a pretext to close the clinic, which was met with sort of great celebration by part of the trans community, or a lot of the trans community, frankly.
So how did you hear about this story, and how did you come to become write an 11,000 word piece about it?
God, only a few times in my career have I sort of gotten obsessed with something, and this was one of those times. They've all involved some sort of academic or social science controversy. In this case, I think it was in the wake of writing a book review essay about Alice Drager's book, Galileo's Middle Finger, which is about sort of instances in which social justice activism and science appear to be at war with each other in ways that aren't necessarily productive for either side. So I think somehow through connections there, she's friends with some of the people involved, or acquaintances. I sort of got turned on to the story that way. And I distinctively remember I printed out the external review and read it on the bus to or from D.C. from New York, and just being like, something is really fishy here. This does not come across as a professional document.
So let's talk. I've heard of that book and I've read a review of it. And so I think a lot of people on the left kind of think oh, those conservatives, they don't believe in science, they don't believe in global warming, they're know nothings, they're backwards. And I guess this book kind of is looking at what ways that people on the left have rejected scientific conclusions. Um, so can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I should be clear that I think right now in the U.S., right-leaning science denialism does a great deal more damage because, climate denialism could eventually kill us all. You have Republicans aggressively lobbying to prevent the NRA from studying gun violence, not the NRA, the CDC from studying gun violence. You have all kinds of stuff like that. That's because,
right. And I should just say, the mere fact that we are mentioning global warming means that commenters below this video will start posting links to, studies questioning the consensus on global warming, and so this is a belief that's pretty widespread among ordinary people in America. That what scientists are saying about global warming is not accurate.
Right. I mean, global warming is a fraud, but that'll be the subject of my next article, so I'll come back to that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just table the global warming discussion for now.
Yeah.
And continue on.
But so basically, the point I want to make is who's worse, liberals or conservatives? I think because conservatives control a lot of state houses and are very influential at the national level, they're worse at the national level. But in places where progressives rule, which is academic communities and some sort of activism communities, I think we have the same tendencies to reject evidence that we see as threatening some core belief.
Mm-hmm. So when you were writing this, I mean, did you think this is going to cause a big stir? Did you think I'm going to get a lot of blowback for this? Were you expecting blowback, or were you thinking like, well, this is kind of, I did my best job, reported out what I found, and it'll get kind of a normal reaction?
It was both. I did my best job to report what I found. I understood that Zucker is viewed as a supervillain by a lot of trans people, and I simultaneously understand why they think that. And there's a
So can you just make, like, what is the case that for people who think that Zucker is really harming people, like what is the best case that they make?
All I could do as a journalist was talk to the activists who participated in the review process. And the evidence they gave me was, I had one tell me that it's traumatic to give a kid toys in a clinic because the kid can understand he's being judged for it. I had another say that she was a clinician who claimed to have worked with former Zucker patients. She said that her patients were traumatized by Zucker, but they didn't know they were traumatized by Zucker. So it reaches a point where either there are victims or there aren't. And every step of the period I spent reporting on the story, I told advocates on both sides, like, if I'm going to tell your side of the story, I need to talk to firsthand people with firsthand experience. And whereas for lack of a better word, pro-Zucker side put me in touch with tons of parents who supported what had happened at the clinic and who frankly weren't transphobic. I spoke with them for a long time. The anti-side, they didn't put me in touch with victims. I spoke with a few people, but Adam was the only one who could speak to a traumatic experience, and it didn't happen. So, as a journalist, all you can do, I don't have access to every person who went through the clinic. I made a good faith effort to talk to people on both sides who had firsthand experience, and, the victims didn't manifest themselves.
So why do you think the hospital, CAMH, is that what people call it?
Yeah.
Why did they decide to use this report as a reason to close the clinic and fire Zucker?
I think part of it is they didn't want to deal with the political controversy. They just thought there was this weird conflation in the hospital statements between what people said about the clinic, between rumors and between reality. Usually we draw a line between those. The hospital decided that whatever people thought about the clinic was what it was going to act on. I also heard some sort of whispers that there's internal financial stuff, that for financial reasons or a direction the CAMH administrators want to take, it just didn't make sense to run this big gender identity clinic anymore. I can't speak to that, but the politics stuff, it's just like, if you're getting barraged by activists who are convinced you are traumatizing trans kids, why would you want to deal with that?
Okay, so once again, I encourage everyone to check out the article. It's long, but it's worth your time. It's very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the reaction that you got. So you now have the honor of having a Twitter hashtag named after you, hashtag firejessesingal.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly trending on Twitter, but there are multiple people using this hashtag. So there was a organized, as much as an organized campaign can happen on Twitter, although you can speak more to this, a campaign to get you fired from New York Magazine for writing this article. So tell me more about the negative response.
Yeah, well, I'm going to look that up now because that was just like one of many examples of how weird Twitter is. But I want to see how Fire Jesse Singal is doing. So I think somebody, as a joke, somebody tweeted me a screen cap of one of my tweets, and they wrote in with handwriting as though I were saying it. Hitler has good ideas. This is someone I know on Twitter. So I think Fire Jesse Singal was actually started by someone who with a legitimate grievance or what they saw as one. Because Twitter is Twitter and it's horrible and it's a trash fire, it was instantly picked up by GamerGators, who is another. I would not subject your watchers to the full GamerGate story. It's sort of an anti-feminist, anti-progressive, I think, group. They would contest that, loosely organized around their identity as gamers, and they hate me for unrelated reasons. So once Fire Jesse Singal got launched, they decided to start tweeting that. But I should say, no one seems to have taken Fire Jesse Singal very seriously. There's not a lot of people tweeting it, but it's still weird to see that hashtag, frankly.
Right. Okay. I do want to touch on Gamergate maybe a little bit later because I think the psychology of it plays into this whole thing. So you were kind of barraged, and I'm friends with you on Facebook and follow you on Twitter, and it seemed like you were kind of under siege. So can you kind of describe like what that felt like? So there's a book came out last year called "So You've Been Publicly Shamed" by the journalist John Ronson, and there was an extended excerpt in the New York Times Magazine. I actually listened to it as an audiobook a couple months ago, and you kind of got not the full public shaming, but people basically wanted to make you like a hate, the 2 minutes of hate person.
Yeah.
And so, like, what happened? Like, how did it hapen, and what did it feel like to be in the middle of that?
Well, so Ronson's book is really good. It's been controversial for certain reasons. He actually DM'd me, which was really nice of him to say, "Hope you're doing all right," because I was sort of basically. I think it took a couple of days after the article went up, but suddenly I was getting a lot of people tweeting at me. Some of them just saying you suck. Another thing they do is they pepper you with questions. So to each individual person, they're only asking you one question, but the aggregate effect is the whole world is asking questions at once. And these are loaded questions. And the idea is that you're going to slip up and you'll say something you're not supposed to say because it's Twitter and you can't get the full nuance in, and they'll beat you up for that. So I got just as with Gamergate and the times I've been sort of featured on Breitbart's homepage, which has happened a few times because they don't like me either. They're that, far right sort of white nationalist website. I didn't get any death threats. There were no physical threats, which I think tells you something. Basically that I'm male and it is worse to be a woman online. I just got sort of a barrage of people really pissed off at me and peppering me with questions. And Tuesday night, I think it was, I probably made the trash fire worse by actively trying to respond to people and starting to freak out a little because I had never sort of experienced this sort of pile-on from my quote-unquote allies. It had always been from the right. So I think I made things worse by responding and not just shutting down my laptop and doing something else for a while.
Okay, so you did not learn one of the lessons from John Ronson's book.
No.
So You've Been Publicly Shamed, which is don't engage. The internet has a short attention span, and when you engage, you're feeding the trolls. Though I don't know whether these people really count as trolls because they kind of have. There's some people who are trolling, just doing this for laughs, for the lulls, as the kids say. There's other people who have what they believe are legitimate grievances,
Absolutely.
but so you just started engaging with people, and that just made things worse?
Yeah. Plenty of people have good faith critiques of this article. I don't want to lump everyone in as trolls. basically at one point, a tipping point was when I shouldn't sort of say people's names here. There's an anti-Gamergate figure. So Gamergate for most of us is sort of, this will make Gamergate mad at me, but it's over. And like, if you're a mainstream journalist, you don't really think much about Gamergate anymore. It had a brief sort of peak in 2014 late. But there's still people.
Okay, and for viewers who, there have been a couple episodes on Blogging Heads about Gamergate. You can look into it. It's very unusual. What I described it in a previous conversation with the journalist Matt Binder as the postmodern news story, because people can't even agree what it's actually about. And that's strange that the two sides, not only do they disagree, but they disagree about like what they disagree about. But people can Google Gamergate and find out more about it. But you, for various reasons, the people who are pro Gamergate, or I don't know if they call themselves Gamergaters, they don't like you.
Yeah, they don't. Actually, where was I going with that? What was the last thing I
said? A Gamergate type person.
Sorry. This is an anti-Gamergate type person who.
Oh, okay.
They're sort of troubled. They have a history of basically making stuff up. They said that I was harassing them online and that I had incited harassment. I made the mistake of highlighting the fact that they were lying. And as I was engaging with them, I got one DM and one email, maybe a third email or DM, basically saying like, this person is trouble, don't engage with them. By then it was too late, because once you're in one of these harassment circles, the act of pointing out that someone is lying about you is taken as, weirdly in an Orwellian way, that's proof of your harassment. Because I'm bringing him more attention, him or her, I'm not going to say the gender. I'm bringing them more attention, and that will bring them more harassment. So the fact that they made up the claim doesn't matter. But me defending myself proves I'm a harasser.
Okay, so it is kind of Kafkaesque, or I don't know if it's more Kafkaesque or
no, I think it's more Kafkaesque. But
yeah.
But this totally blew things up more, because if I had let these tweets be, the tweets were of the forum, somebody help me, Jesse's inciting harassment, my mentions are filling up. And they were demonstrably false because their mentions weren't filling up. Because you can see if someone's mentions are filling up.
So for people who aren't on Twitter, can you just explain a little bit about how this kind of works? Yeah. And like what and mentions and so forth?
Yeah. So I don't, by like New York media standards, I don't have a massive platform on Twitter, but by Twitter standards, there are 7,000 people who follow me. So hypothetically, if I tweeted out your name, Aryeh, and I did it in the right way and said, you hate Gamergate, I could get Gamergate to attack you, which I'm going to do right after we get off, just to sort of let off steam. The person I was engaged with had a history I was unaware of Gamergate harassing them, or so they said. So I made the mistake, and this is exactly the sort of contextual mistake you can make when you feel wrongly like you're fighting for your online life and just responding to everyone. Because if you're just punching back randomly at everyone, one of your punches is going to accidentally hit like an orphan. And then everyone will take a picture of you hitting the orphan, and that's the story. So I did the...
Jesse Singal punches orphan.
Well, this is exactly what happened. I punched the proverbial orphan, and at one point, this drove me fucking crazy. I'm flailing on Twitter. I'm trying to explain what's going on. So I tweet out something like, there are some unstable people here. Meaning the people making stuff up about me, who I've just been told offline are unstable. That gets screen capped by an anti-abuse person named Izzy Galvez. And he screen caps that and then says that I am saying that transgender critics of my article are unstable. So it goes from me trying to explain myself online, and this goes back to never try to explain yourself during an incident like that, to suddenly I am saying trans people are unstable. Which is just like, what did I gain out of defending myself from a few tweets? I just made things worse, and it's incredibly unfair, and I'm disgusted it was done. But somebody was going to do that because I was in the spotlight. Which is, I don't remember exactly what Ronson says about keeping your head down, but like, dude, everyone, when it's you think that you're going to be the one who like talks people out of it, but no way. Everyone is just watching because it's a spectacle, and you're going to punch the orphan eventually.
Okay, so this is really fascinating to me. So, so the person who's an anti-abuse activist, I don't quite know what that means. I guess is it like anti-bullying?
they are like someone engaged in there's like an organized anti-Gamergate brigade still, I think. I don't know. I'm sort of not in this world. They have on their profile, I think, anti-abuse advocate. They mention anti-abuse.
Okay.
Um,
I think we're all anti-abuse.
yeah,
I don't know
well,
who the pro-abuse.
I mean, apparently
pro-abuse
I am,
people
because I
are.
was inciting Gamergate abuse.
Okay, so my question is, do you think that this person sincerely believed what he said, or was he just wanting to? He saw that you accidentally punched an orphan,
Yeah.
and he was like, okay, I hate Jesse Singal. Jesse Singal accidentally punched an orphan. Here's my chance.
That's what sort of disgusted me about this is like, this person I think was familiar that I had written critical stuff about Gamergate, that I'm anti-harassment, that I had told the stories of people who had been harassed, but then none of that counted for shit as soon as I was sort of the target of one of these. So I don't know what was going through his head. I also think that like the whole problem here, and I'm sure I participated in this, is it's very easy to tweet out Jesse Singal thinks trans people are unstable. Whereas if this is going to sound quaint, but like maybe email somebody before you make a claim like that, because I would have explained it differently. That'll never ever happen, and I'm sure I've been on the other side of this. But the one thing I want to say is like, as I'm whining and bitching to you, like I'm eating an M&M cookie and drinking a beer in my office at my job that I love. I want people to imagine like the shit that happens to me happens to people who are much less able to take it. Like I'll totally be fine. I'm over it, other than being a little bit pissed off. Often this stuff targets people who are much more vulnerable and marginalized. I mean, there's this awful story in the Daily Dot about. Did you know Steven Universe, like the cartoon?
It sounds familiar, but why don't you?
It's just a kid's cartoon, and there's like a thriving fan community around it. Somebody became the target of online abuse and bullies because they drew these cartoon characters. This social justice contingent within the Steven Universe fan community decided they were drawing characters too fat or too skinny or the wrong color. So this person was fat phobic. They were racist. They were just doing everything wrong. And no matter how they drew the character, somebody would call them oppressive just for drawing a cartoon character the wrong way. This person ended up in the hospital with suicidal ideation because they were so attacked by their own community. Because they didn't draw cartoon characters the right way. Which is all my way of saying, like, I think a very easy response to this is like, poor Jesse Singal, cis white dude who has luckily to have a good job. I don't think that
we should just for the viewers out there. Cis refers to cisgender, which is the opposite of transgender. It means that you're you can define it, but probably better than I could.
Yeah, it just means you are comfortable with the gender you were assigned at birth. So I would hope the takeaway from this or from any harassment story is like, it shouldn't be, oh, poor privileged person, because A, it does actually suck. I mean, everyone's a human being, but B, there are all these under the radar cases of it going on every day, and just these communities sort of, it really is a circular firing squad thing where they just attack each other all day, and there are some people who rely on Twitter for community, and it sucks for them, or Tumblr in the case of the Steven Universe person, and they just get I don't know, man. It wasn't fun for me, and I was in the best possible situation to deal with it.
So one of the tweets, I think you must have linked to it. That's how I found it. I won't say the person's Twitter handle, but I'll just read the series of tweets that this person posted. So this person wrote, "Normally I don't advocate attacking one's job, but when they're using that job as a platform for abuse, I feel a moral obligation to do so. Jesse has gone completely off the rails, choosing to side with hate groups and destroy someone's life in the process. Note that this whole shitstorm started because Jesse really badly, absolutely had to feed his instinct to not be seen as wrong. When you're feeding that instinct so much, you're harming people you claim to care about, siding with their predators, all in caps. It's time to STFU," which for the viewers out there stands for shut the fuck up. Yeah. So what struck me about this and why I thought it was so unusual was that it was almost like this was like a politician who was like, at the in the well of the Senate, like, I come to you today with a heavy heart.
Yeah.
Look
at this yellow cake uranium. More
sorrow than in anger.
Yeah.
And so this is, I think, just a normal person. This person has around 200 Twitter followers. Saying, normally I don't advocate attacking one's job, but it's just like, so I kind of like understood from this series of tweets that people really see these, like, they see themselves as kind of like characters in a morality play. they are engaged in like a titanic struggle,
Yeah.
and for someone to people who are attacking you, some of them were probably just doing it, to gain social status or because they thought it was funny, but others really thought they were striking a blow for justice
Yeah.
by taking down Jesse Singal.
And
Do you have any thoughts on
No,
this?
I have a lot. I mean, I think that's a fast. I think was that the person who started the Fire Jesse Singal hashtag?
I think so.
Could you read me back the one? I'm trying to find it here. The one about ruining someone's life.
Let's see. When you're feeding that instinct so much, your harm feel claim to care about. Jesse has gone completely off the rails, choosing to side with hate groups and destroy someone's life in the process.
Right. So there are things in that tweet I disagree with. The one that strikes me the most, because I see this a lot in the most toxic online progressive communities, is partly because a lot of these people in these communities have come from a place of real trauma. There is this belief that one tweet can ruin your life. The concept of harassment, I think, means a different thing for them than it does for me, because I don't like the way the term's been defined down. I think even if you tweet the Gamergate hashtag at someone, they will catch some shit. I don't think it's a straight line between that and death threats, which I know people are going to criticize me wildly for. But if you're on Twitter every day with that kind of bunker mentality of by dot replying or retweeting someone, you could ruin their life. I mean, Jesus Christ, man, there are horrible real-life incidents of internet harassment. I mean, Amanda Hess, Lindy West, folks like that, Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, endless examples. But it doesn't work like that, where one tweet is going to ruin someone's life. So, I don't know. I think that can partly explain their sense of self-righteousness, that normally I wouldn't do something like try to get one fired. But this time, Jesse did something so bad that is warranted. And I think I've realized that, like, unfortunately, people coming from a place like that, I really just need to block them on Twitter, because I don't want to deal with people like that. I don't want to, like, and when I say people like that, I mean very specifically the small core of people who view this whole thing as like a battlefield. So I actually don't think Twitter's a battlefield. I think Twitter sucks in a lot of ways and is a giant football field with like individual dumpster fires on it, but maybe it's easy for me to say I don't hold this worldview where one wrong tweet and your life is ruined. One tweet doesn't ruin anyone's life. Right? Yeah, I know I'm going to catch flack for that, but I guess if people want to claim that one tweet will ruin someone's life, I think that's a pretty big claim, and they should have to defend it.
Right. So, I mean, one tweet can ruin your life. It happened to the woman whose name is escaping right now, who made the joke about AIDS.
Justine Sacco, right?
Justine Sacco. Right. But she was, so whoever this person is was accusing you of ruining someone's life. So this would be the screenshot that you mentioned earlier. Is that what they're referring to?
Yeah, and I think at one point, someone posted me their own screenshot of how they had tried to get me fired by sending something to New York Mag, and I had said, that's exactly what Gamergate did to me, which is absolutely true. The only other group that's ever tried to get me fired was Gamergate. And I did the hashtag for Gamergate. That was my mistake. So in the view of people, I was then calling Gamergate to harass them. If people want to look back Tuesday night and see if that actually led their life to be ruined, I'm skeptical, because I think it's less straightforward than that. And then the person who made up the claim apparently had a long history with Gamergate I was unaware of. And they did end up getting attacked by Gamergate, because Gamergate opportunistically came in and sort of broadcast this stuff further, all of which is a long-winded way of me saying I should have blocked this person as soon as they started making accusations of me. So
okay.
That person, that's a really dumb series of tweets, but the one thing they had right is that I felt the need to be right. And in the heat of the moment, you could be doing yourself a disservice by needing to be right rather than just backing away.
Mm-hmm. So I think, okay, so there's a couple more places things I want to ask you about. So, I mean, one of the things is like, you ruin someone's life through a tweet, and there's kind of a inability or a choice to suspect the worst of your political opponent. This happens all the time in all walks of life. But I think so people were basically accusing you of, wanting to end trans people's lives.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't like an explicit
No,
thing,
that was
but
what was implied. I mean, yeah. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So I mean, so there. I think this is probably people were sincerely believe that because of your writing, you want to like erase a segment of people from from the world, and there are people out there, I'm sure, who wish that transgender people didn't exist. You are not one of them. I think it's safe to say, but I think in these Twitter battles, it's always like jump to the take it to the nth degree, make the Hitler comparison, think that your enemies want to erase you, dehumanize you. So we were kind of joking on Twitter about you were saying that the Gamergate people they have this kind of weird way of talking. It's like they learned everything from the movies, or I guess you were saying like, where does this come from? I was joking like maybe it's because these people like just watch TV all the time and don't have a lot of actual human conversations.
Yeah.
And someone like jumped in to say like, stop with the dehumanization. Like that's not dehumanization. Like dehumanization is like Jews are vermin,
Right.
and they need to be exterminated. I was basically like saying like these guys are dorks. Like that's not dehumanization. So someone like was immediately taking it to the, you don't accusing me of not thinking that this person was a human.
Yeah.
Or thinking they shouldn't deserve the status of a human or the rights of a human. When really I was just saying you're a nerd.
But
which is kind of a pretty mild insult on the internet.
But nothing's a mild insult on the internet. Because I mean, I'm going to sound like a 70-something 60 Minutes anchor, but on Twitter, to get attention, you need to make the sort of most spectacular claim possible. And because of the way social dynamics work and groups feed off each other and shit snowballs, it's never like I saw reasonable one person who I'm like online friends with who is a trans writer said even she was sort of like she said, I'm afraid this article will lead young trans people to not get access to health care. And it's just like if you read the article, I don't know, man, there's a tendency toward maximalization. Everything, making it worse than it has to be or worse than it is. And that's how you get, I followed someone yesterday, a Kotaku editor, and she called me a piece of shit for following her. So, I should say that I need to emphasize, A, I didn't get harassed. Nothing bad happened, no threats. B, bizarrely.
Was there anything beyond Twitter messages and emails? Did anyone, no one doxed you, no one, which is a term for when people, publish someone's street address or their phone number or something so that a horde of, online monsters can ruin their lives. Were there any repercussions beyond the Twitter and email sphere?
No, and if I judged it there weren't. And if I judged it based on email, I would have thought people loved the article. Because the people who had strong enough views about the article to actually write more than however many characters, I had an outpouring of people saying they appreciated the article. I also had an outpouring of people supporting me via DMs and emails while the bullshit was going on. So it's really just Twitter where people are saying the really mean stuff. I'm trying to think. I think every critical email I got was thoughtful and courteous and nice. It's just Twitter. Twitter is unsolvable. This idea that we're going to create a Twitter free of harassment and people being dicks is this bizarre fantasy that people repeat over and over and over. And then you ask them for specifics, and they're like, make it easier to ban people. Like, there's no solution. Twitter's done as like a nice platform. It's so over. And it seems like I'm just saying this because I've been attacked, but a lot of people have been saying that for a while, and it's totally true, I think.
Okay, so you continue to tweet. So do you do that because as a journalist you feel like it's a professional obligation to be on Twitter because a lot of journalists talk to each other on Twitter and a lot of breaking news is on Twitter? Do you feel like you enjoy using Twitter? Or, I mean, why haven't you deleted your account, basically? Which is what everyone thinks you should do, Jesse. Just delete your account already and go kill yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Why haven't you done that?
I thought about it. I asked our social media person about it. I asked my boss about it. When I asked about it, it was less in like I got to escape the abuse way, because the abuse only lasted like a couple days. And excuse me, I think abuse is the term I'd call it. I don't want to do that lately either. I wouldn't call it harassment, because I do think harassment is like threats. But I don't know. I have a horrible love-hate relationship with Twitter. I think it's great for making dumb jokes, and it's great for stupid memes. It's great during times like Ferguson. People overrate it because it's also so good for spreading false information. But I had Twitter was vital for me to follow what was going on in Ferguson. I think I made the cost-benefit analysis that I need to radically reshape my Twitter experience in terms of which circles I interact with and who I view as toxic and stay away from. And I think I hadn't fully understood that there's not a simple correlation between who you're ideologically aligned with and who isn't toxic. So it's not like the more progressive you go, the less toxic people are. There are toxic people everywhere, and you just need to find them and block them. And the sort of anti-Gamergate types who are screen capping me and trying to lead the brigade, they can say whatever they want. I'm lucky to be in a position where I have a job and I'm not threatened by them, but I'm just I want nothing to do with that world anymore. And I also wonder, some of the stuff that went on during Gamergate, where it was just constant outrage. Even though I have such fundamental ideological disagreement with Gamergate, I'm curious how much of that was productive, other than clear instances of harassment, like Anita Sarkeesian or Zoe Quinn. How much of that was actually useful? How much of that was? A lot of this stuff isn't anything. You dig into the specific conflict or circular firing squad, and there's just nothing there. So basically, I think the benefit outweighs the cost of staying on Twitter. I'm just going to do it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. And, someone who I talked to on Blogging Heads about a year ago, Freddie DeBoer, he's a big critic of, so he's on the left. He's a big critic of of a lot of left activism, especially online activism. And I think his critique is one I agree with, which is basically these Twitter wars and stuff, it's performative, and it maybe makes you feel good, and you can feel rah, we're all on the same side, we're vanquishing the evildoers, but it accomplishes very, very little, vanishingly little in the real world. But what he is so incensed about is that people think they're accomplishing something for the cause of liberalism or progressivism, and really they're doing nothing.
Absolutely. Totally. I agree. I think Freddie, I don't agree with everything he says. I think this whole performative allyship, it lets white people off the hook, frankly, because we can just be yeah, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, I support. And it's all bullshit. It is the cheapest form of talk in the world to say, I support this aggrieved group, or I support the fight against Jesse. It's just there's nothing to it. And so much of journalism these days is paying attention to Twitter that isn't warranted, because in the real world, Twitter means way less than it means to us, except in specific instances Black Lives Matter or whatever, where it did have a real world impact. But the toxic social justice Twitter thing is so fucking stupid, and just it. And again, it's easy to think I'm just saying this because of my last week, but I've just been sympathetic to that view for a while, and this sort of drove it home for me.
Mm-hmm. We're probably about near the end of our time. Is there any other kind of life lessons or moral lessons you've learned from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to just make this about other people. One thing I regret is that I think when I was in my accidentally punching the orphan phase and responding to people, I think some of the people I was responding to were trans people who had been through shit I could never understand. And they saw in my article transphobia that I honestly don't think was there. Or they were, frankly part of the mob, because even people who are legitimately marginalized and victimized, we're all susceptible to the mob mentality. So what makes me grimace a little bit is I'm sure there were people, because I was throwing punches wildly, which you should never do. I'm sure there's people who, even if I didn't view their complaints as legitimate or good faith, they did. And I was probably rude or snarky or whatever to them. And that makes me feel really shitty as a journalist, because that isn't how you should react to people who have good faith reasons for being upset. So I think it was just an example of how Twitter strips everyone's context. They were missing context on my end, which is that felt like I was under siege at the time. I was missing the much more important context on their end, which is that they had been through really terrible stuff, and they saw it echoed, in my view, wrongly in my article. So it really does dehumanize us, because we each see each other just as this sort of superficial thing. So in terms of what I would have done differently, other than just not responding or asking people to send emails instead, I promise if I look back at my timeline at that night, which I'm sure as hell not going to do because it'll make me puke, that there will be interactions with people that, didn't reflect on me as well as they could have. And I'll know that next time this happens, because I'm sure it will at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I was joking about dehumanization. How people were saying, I was dehumanizing someone, and I think something I've learned from my online interactions, and I try to remember it, although I surely don't do it all the time, is that everyone who is online is a real person, and they're a real person with as much moral worth as me or you. And,
well, I don't know about us, but they have some moral worth.
they have, as they feel things in the same way I feel things.
Right.
And when you call someone an idiot, a moron, whatever negative term you want to, there's a real person on the other side of that. I think we kind of forget that often in online interactions, because it just seems like it's words appearing on the screen, and but they're coming from a real human, and that's something we should always remember in dealing, in online interactions, is that the person who you're arguing with is just as much of a person as you are.
Yeah, and
maybe that's just kind of like trite or something, but I think a lot of people just forget it.
No, it's true. And after the Kotaku editor called me a piece of shit, I actually did send her an email. I was just like, look, I'm not used to being called a piece of shit. I just wanted to send you an I am a human being email. So I don't know if that worked or if she kept calling me that, but you're absolutely right. And I promise I've been guilty of it too, especially when it comes to people with whom I have serious ideological disagreements. So I'm going to try to be conscious too of not being on the other side of this.
Yeah, and I mean it's obvious, but would you say if you're about to call someone something online or say something to someone online, would you say it to them, to their face? Right. If you say it to them to their face, there's a chance they could punch you in your face. But if you can put that aside, would you say, if you were staring at someone, would you would you say what you're about to say? And if you wouldn't, then you probably shouldn't write it on the internet, because a real person is going to read it.
It's good advice that no one will ever follow.
Well, you never know. Maybe we'll start a revolution with this conversation, and we'll see what the commenters below think, and whether they want to take my advice to realize that all of the people commenting on this video are real people, just as real as they are. But I think that's about the end of our time. Jesse, thanks so much. So once again, we'll link to the article. I encourage everyone to read it. If they want to delve into Jesse's Twitter feed and kind of see how the shit went down, your Twitter account will be linked below this video as well. So thanks so much for coming on, and thanks to our viewers, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, bye.